Prepare yourself to be blown away by the seismic sounds and scrutiny of AFTERSHOCKS Podcast with Chris Aiken and Matt Hartnett.
All right, well, here we go, and welcome to another episode of AFTERSHOCKS on AFTERSHOCKspodcast.com. And joining us today, we have a very special guest who is the guitarist from UK melodic hard rockers Lionheart, who are set to release their new full-length titled The Reality of Miracles, out July 31st through Metalville Records. And of course, some of you may just know him from his time and contributions on the self-titled debut release from a little band that you may have heard of before called Iron Maiden. And of course, I'm talking about Mr. Dennis Stratton. Dennis, thanks so much for coming on with us. Excuse me. First off, how are you, and how are the rest of the guys in Lionheart doing with what's going on with the pandemic?
Oh, mate. Well, thanks for the interview. Thanks for calling me. It's fantastic. It's a long story, you know, because we started this album a couple of years ago, and we couldn't ever see it getting finished, and because everyone was so busy with other projects, and getting everyone together to try and finish the album. As I say, we started it 2 years ago, and then slowly other projects got in the way. Steve Mann being with the Shaker Fest, and I'm doing shows all over Europe and South America and things like that. I do a lot of Maiden conventions where I do the first two albums that I worked on. So I've been doing that for like the last sort of like 18 years, and it really goes down well. But with the virus, with the lockdown, basically it meant that we couldn't go anywhere, and so stuck at home. The idea was that let's get this album finished and as quick as possible. So the lockdown for us has been quite beneficial for Lionheart. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, the Reality of Miracles, it marks the second album now since the band's reunion back in 2016, and it's the follow-up to Second Nature, which you guys released the following year after that. Did you ever imagine, Dennis, that the band would regenerate the way it has with the last two records? I mean, the band has released more new music now over the last 3 years than it did the previous 30 plus, years. And the band is arguably, you guys are stronger than ever. And it seems like, you have no plans on slowing down in terms of creating new music. Could you have ever envisioned this rebirth happening the way it did?
No, funny enough, you said the right thing there. You hit the nail on the head. Was that we were asked to do the Rockingham Festival 2016. Now, the thing is, what people don't realise, guys, is that me, Steve, and Rocky never actually ever split up. Basically, when it got to around about 2019, well, 88, 86, 87, Rocky and Steve were working with Schenker. In 1990, I joined Mantis, as you know, for 15 years. But we always kept in contact as the three of us for the sake of Lionheart and for the sake of the band. And we always used to keep in contact and maybe just send one another songs around, like little things we were working on that we weren't going to use in our own projects, like with Schenker or with Mantis. And it was only because Mantis working with Pony Canyon in Japan that the record company said to me, like, you're still in contact with Steve and Rocky. You've still got all these songs. And I said, yes, we've got some old songs that we had back in the 80s. And we've also got some new stuff that's never been recorded, never been put on a CD. So basically, myself, Rocky, and Steve put an album together of all the songs that we were working on while we were working on other projects. We were able to let Pony Canyon have about, I think, 20 songs, which they put on a CD called Raiders of the Lost Archive.
Yeah.
And basically, we kept in contact all the time. We wasn't a working unit, as you know, because we all had our other projects. And Lionheart has never been a band that bring any income in even from 1980. So you do these other projects to create an income, which means that it gives you the free time to work on the stuff that you enjoy. And you know, going from Lionheart with me, Steve and Rocky, going into Praying Mantis with me, Tino and Chris, was a mirror image, because it was a bass player and a guitarist, and all three of us sung. So it was like one family goes into another family. And so that was why I spent so many years with Praying Mantis, 15 years. But then getting back to what you said regarding the reality of miracles, regarding Second Nature, sorry. Basically what happened was, you know, Mantis had reformed with another lineup, and I was still doing my other stuff. Steve still Schenkerfest. Rocky was working with other bands. And then they said, you know, would you do this festival? We said yes. We got together with Lee Small and Clive Edwards, the old drummer that we used to work with. And it just seemed like magic. It just seemed that when we started playing the stuff that we did in 1980, 81, 2, 3, and 4, it just came naturally that the songs just seemed to flow. So after that festival, we were asked would we do another album and just, you know, see how it goes? And we said yes. And we got so much support from the UK and America and everywhere else. And that album, Second Nature, was voted #1 AOR album in UK for classic rock. And for us, that was magic. And it was only because of that, after Second Nature, that we said, look, you know, we can still carry on with the projects that we're working on. We can still make an income somewhere else. Let's concentrate on Lionheart as a love for Lionheart. And that's what we did. But we didn't expect the 2 year that the album was being recorded really quickly, because Second Nature was done in about 6 months. With Reality of Miracles, we hit so many problems. Brexit, with Steve living in Germany. We had so many political problems that really didn't include us, but it affected us. And then, of course, most of the songs were recorded. Everything was ready to go. Steve was away with Schenker, so he couldn't concentrate on finishing the last parts of the album. And then, of course, when it got to the end of February, we come into lockdown. That was the start of let's get this finished. And it was finished within 2 or 3 months. So it for us, I know it's a long-winded answer, but for us to go to Rockingham, go through all that 2 years of delay and heartache, suddenly we got a new lease of life. Of anything good that anything come out of this dreadful thing would be us getting this album finished.
Right. And you know what's interesting, Dennis, is that for as much as that sounds very tumultuous and difficult, you've created a release with the Reality of Miracles that is surprisingly cohesive. I mean, it is an easy flowing release from start to finish. You know, was that difficult in itself to do, to create music that flowed so fluidly, especially when you No?
Sorry, carry on.
Well, no, I was just going to say, especially since you had so many things to overcome, a lot of times that would lead to, you know, kind of a disjointed record a song here, write a song there, and have it not quite fit as well as it does together.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yes, you're correct. Yeah, it is strange. But the funny thing was that I remember two and a bit years ago, we were on tour with Air Race in the UK, and the tour got cancelled. The last 2 shows were cancelled because the singer in Air Race, his sister had died, and they had to get the singer back to Wales, and so the tour couldn't carry on. And out of respect for the lady, that we said we wouldn't do any more shows and we would book them in at a later date. But it was that evening that we drove to Rockies, and it was just before Christmas. And that was 2 years ago, maybe even longer. And excuse me. And And we were talking about these songs for the new album after Second Nature had been out. And Rocky, we sat in Rocky's house in Grantham, and he said, look, I've got these 3 or 4 songs that I've been knocking around with. And I said, well, I've got these couple of songs, 1 song, 2 songs. I've got this idea. And we started in 2 days. We stayed at Rocky's. We were just bouncing ideas off of one another. And it seems to flow so naturally because we have this, I don't know, connection,
Sure.
if you call it that. And the good thing about Lee is because Lee's such a great writer. On Second Nature, when I wrote 30 Years, I wrote the first verse and the chorus. And I said to him, look, Lee, this is about anyone that's experienced what I have over the last 30 years of playing, touring, been around the world, conquered my fears, you know, things like that. He took that song away and came back with some fantastic lyrics. And we can trust him to sort of like get an idea that Steve will get an idea of a song and he will give it to Lee and Lee will then go to town with the lyrics. But I think the way we write separately always seems to gel with the feel of Lionheart, knowing that you're writing a song regarding harmony guitars, which we've always been in love with, which has always been my love from Wishbone Ash. And then when I first played with Iron Maiden, showing Dave Murray a harmony guitar riff, which Maiden had never really used,
right?
Because they would just had one guitarist. And at the end of the day, it was written. The songs are written around the harmony guitars and the harmony vocals. And Lee just puts the icing on the cake with the lead vocal and some great lyrics. So it's not done on purpose. I think it's just naturally that when you're writing this song, you've got harmony vocals in mind, you've got harmony guitars in mind, and it's got to be the kind of music that we love. And we've always been in love with the AOR, American bands like the Journeys and your Foreigners and your Totos. We've always been in love with them bands since we were 16, 17 and listening to Steve Lukather and things like that. We've always been in love with, you know, Journey and Neil Schon and Steve Perry. We've always been followers of them bands. So it's hard not to write a song in that sort of style, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Now, Dennis, I've always been curious about your career after Iron Maiden. If you think, and this is my thought, you could tell me that I'm full of shit if that's the case, but I have always thought that in a way, the association that always comes with you with Iron Maiden has actually hurt your ability to branch out away from metal. I mean, you've recorded a bunch of really, really great melodic rock music, you know, whether it's Lionheart and especially even the Dennis Stratton records were very, you know, strong melodic rock stuff. But I think people, because every press release you've ever had, I think, says former Iron Maiden guitarist Dennis Stratton, and it automatically makes people look for metal. And then when they don't hear it, they don't give it a fair chance. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. We noticed that. Well, we witnessed that with Def Leppard in 1981 and 82, because you know, everyone in the UK, the minute Def Leppard started singing Hello America and things like that, and we went on tour with Def Leppard, and they got a really rough ride because they'd sold out and because they were the guys from Sheffield that were trying to make out they were from LA. So I imagine it does affect you that way. I've always tried to ignore people's taste in heavy metal. Luckily for me, I've got to say, from the minute I departed from Iron Maiden, although the Maiden fans haven't supported Lionheart so much, and I know that the Maiden fans hasn't supported Mantis so much, but what I've found, I've been really lucky, the fact that the fans accept me for who I am and what I am. Like, I can go anywhere in the world and play the set I play in Europe which I was supposed to be playing this week and last week in Brazil, is the first album all the way through, and half the second album, which is what I worked on with Killers and stuff like that. I worked on them songs, so that's my work. So I'm quite capable of being able to go on stage and play what I actually put into them songs, and I don't think anyone would begrudge me that, or Rod Smallwood or Steve Harris. I spoke to Steve Harris last night, and I'm quite sure I speak to him all the time. I'm quite sure that they don't mind me doing these shows. But as far as the Iron Maiden fans go, I've been very lucky that they've taken me under their wing and they've still treated me like one of their boys, because wherever I go, I was in Vegas last year, October, with Maiden, with Steve and the guys, and it was 8 or 10 of us went over there from the UK. We had a great week in Vegas. Whenever I go to the O2, whenever I go to the Download, I'm accepted by the Maiden fans, and every time I walk anywhere, they're always chanting and they're always cheering, because they've accepted me the way I am. That I'm not a heavy metal guy, but they accept me for the person I am, as part of the Maiden family. If you see what I mean.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. And
Dennis, I imagine that you're right in a way that record sales, you're not going to get many Iron Maiden fans buying a Lionheart album, but you also might get a few of them that just want to may have a listen. So I don't know,
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, Dennis. You kind of brought it up before about you were talking about when Lionheart started. After you were no longer in Iron Maiden, the band. I mean, everybody in the band. The song Lionheart. It was such a very new wave of British heavy metal type of song, and it's really just sort of, I guess, that one track that really, I think, got a lot of people excited, thinking, okay, this is. I mean, you had members yourself. You had also members in the band were from Tigers of Pantang and Def Leppard. So it was obvious that would probably be the I guess the way you guys would go about making music in the beginning. But then obviously you listen to a song like Dealer, another great song. But you could tell with Dealer, it was sort of going towards more of that, like you said, a lot of the harmonies and more of the maybe I wouldn't say commercial sound, but just a little less of that new wave of British heavy metal. So when and why did the band change its sound exactly so drastically after that Lionheart track? Because it was such a huge change, which I think a lot of fans might have gotten a little confused about.
Well, I think when we first started in 1980, the idea was that we wanted to get a bunch of songs together as quickly as possible to strike while the iron was still hot from Iron Maiden, and with Jess Cox leaving Tigers of Pantang. Although Jess didn't last very long because we didn't realise that he couldn't sing very well. And when you've got 3 backing vocals like me, Rocky and Steve, you really need a powerful singer, and he just didn't cut it. So when you've got a band trying to get a bunch of songs together as quickly as possible, you sort of tend to go towards the new wave of British heavy metal. But then I think only a few months went by when we realised that the influences that we had from Toto and from Foreigner and from Journey and Kansas and so on, the influences we had seemed to affect our love for what we wanted to play. So I think it was an own up time. It was hands on the table, cards on the table. What sort of band do we want? Do we want to go like? Do we want to imitate a heavy metal band, or do we just want to play from the heart and go the way we believe and we enjoy doing? And I think that's what we did. And the album we got together with Hot Select with Kevin Beamish, we thought we had a bunch of songs that were not too heavy, but heavy enough. The production's not very good. We weren't that happy with the production on Hot Tonight, and also the way Kevin Beamish got Chad, the singer, to sing like Michael Jackson, because Chad certainly didn't sing like that before we went to LA, but for some reason, Chad thought that if he sung every song at the top of his range, like Michael Jackson, it would make a big impression. Well, it didn't. It made it worse. So for us, the whole first album, Hot Tonight, and going to LA with a Kenny English, ended up being a complete nightmare for us. So that sort of set us back a good year or two, because when we come back from CBS Records, went from LA to New York. When we came back, we wasn't put on any tours. We didn't have any tour support from CBS. We didn't have any help because we didn't have a manager. It was just a disaster. So the first album just seemed to come out and dwindle away. It just disappeared. So I think we've always believed in the Lionheart sound and the harmony guitars and the harmony vocals. And with Second Nature, what you say about the writing the songs, I just think it's just natural. It comes out naturally. You can't, I think I wrote 30 years on Second Nature because I was talking to Steve Harris about us writing it together. And he was up for it, but then something happened. He had to go away, and he couldn't get involved. But I had to write that song as a heavy riff because Steve was going to be involved. So I tried to tend to lean towards the heavy rock side of it with that song, 30 Years, although he wasn't involved. And it's the same on this album. Lee came up with his track, Five Tribes, and he came out of nowhere, and we thought, Jesus, it's like Lionheart has been reborn, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's one of the things where I think we don't purposely do it. It's just naturally the way the music we listen to, and that's the way the song starts to develop through your inner mind or something, your inner conscious, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Just as a two-part question I have here for you, just real quick. I mean, I did read, in the press release that originally, when you guys took a break back in the mid-'80s, a lot of it was due to managerial problems, as well as the fact that, the momentum you guys just didn't feel anymore. It wasn't there anymore. But what was interesting when I read that statement, and what you normally read when bands break up, is it's usually due to musical, creative, or even personal differences. And there's none of that in there, which explains, and you mentioned about this earlier when we first started talking, that you guys never actually sort of broke up. It's just sort of because you guys were busy with all the other bands. Did all that time away from each other between Steve, Rocky, and yourself, did it make the three of you guys realize how good the chemistry indeed was, regardless of the fact that you may have not reached that bar that you set for yourselves on that first record, Hot Tonight, back in '84?
Well, the funny thing was, you just said the right thing again, because it was the fact of being let down so badly. We were supposed to be on tour with REO Speedwagon, that got cancelled. We were supposed to be on tour with Kansas, that got postponed. We were supposed to be on tour with this bloke. It never happened. And in the end, you get disillusioned. And what happened was we come away and we were hurt, and we put everything into it, and then we decided that it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't a fact of us breaking up, as you said. We kept in contact. We kept writing little songs together. We'd always text one another wherever Rocky and Steve would be with Schenker or wherever they were. And I'd be in Japan with Prayer Mantis, and I might meet up with Steve. It was one of those things where you didn't, although you didn't get together as regular as you should. The feeling was still there. But what you said just now was, it wasn't the fact of realizing how much the chemistry was missing. I'll tell you when it happened was when Pony Canyon asked us to do that album with all the old songs that we had that we actually got on this, and the Raiders of the Lost Archives. The funny thing was, we got into the studio, the three of us, and we hadn't seen one another for years. But the chemistry, then we knew. It was one of those things where you didn't miss them because you're too busy doing other things. You missed the banter, you missed the fun, but it was getting back to do that album and finished getting that album mixed, which Steve did all the mastering and everything else and the mixing. Once we'd done that, it was like one day, we'll do it. We'll have another go one day, and we kept in contact. And it was only the fact that we got this call to do Rockingham, and we got together here in Saffron Walden, where I live, studios here. And it was, as soon as we picked up the guitars and started playing, you just looked at one another, and there were certain things that you thought, what's coming next? What's the verse? What's the words? What's the chorus?
Right.
But all of a sudden, the lyrics, the words just come out of your mouth. You're looking at one another going, you know what? I didn't know what we were going to sing there, but it just came to me as we got to that part. And you then realise that's where the chemistry was, is when you meet up again. And then after Rocking 'Em, that was it. When we said, let's do Second Nature, and because it's easy now, isn't it, with with Wi-Fi, WhatsApp, and everything else, you can record an album in different countries, and Steve would just piece it together like the jigsaw in Germany, So it's quite easy to record the album, but that's when you really know how much you've missed, is when you all meet up again and go, God, really missed you, and that sort of thing. That's how it felt,
right. And Dennis, one of the probably unsung bonuses that you have is actually having Steve as a member of the band and doing all the production, because he already relates to the music that's being created. He's not trying to figure out the music as well as figure out how to make it sound. He knows instinctively what it's supposed to sound like because he helped create it. No?
Exactly. And I'll tell you as well, you couldn't be, you're spot on, you're 100% every time I say this, because I can be sitting here in the bedroom on my laptop and with the guitar and just on Cubase, and I'll just put some harmony guitars down, a little riff, this, that, play a few chords for a verse. I can send that to Steve on WhatsApp or on a voice recorder from the phone, because I don't have internet. I don't have internet here at the farm, so it's all done by carrier pigeon, and I'm quite, it's like living in a cave up here. I don't have the internet, so basically I just record it on the phone or record it on the Cubase. Then I'll record the song I've just played on my phone, and I'll WhatsApp to him, and I guarantee within about half an hour he would have listened to that on the phone. He would have sat down in the studio, and he would have a backing track with half that song already done. And he'll send it back to me, and he'll say, "Is this what you mean?" And it is spot on. So it is telepathic. It is one of the things that you said. Mixing, when we put it in there, he's a fantastic producer. Yeah. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and some of the keyboard stuff he puts down and effects is fantastic. But he'll always say, "Here's a rough mix of so-and-so. Here's a rough mix of a track. Tell me what you think." And within 15 minutes, myself, Rocky, Lee, Clive, will always be texting him straight away and saying, "Steve, that's fantastic, but then he can build on it, taking everyone's feelings into consideration." And that's how we work, which is so fast as well.
Right, definitely. Now, Dennis, one last quick question. It's it's almost the same question I asked you before, but it's I'm going to word it differently because I have a different thought. I have always thought, earlier I asked you about the stigma of Iron Maiden. I almost wonder if the legend of Iron Maiden has affected not only you, but anybody that has been in the band, because it seems like, at least to my ear, you've created a lot of great music outside of Iron Maiden, but so has Blaze Bayley, so has Paul Di'Anno, and none of you guys have been able to really use that to your advantage, and I just wonder, do you think that being associated with a band that is, arguably one of the top 5 in the history of the genre holds back anybody that is not a current member of the band?
I think, to be honest with you, because over the last 30 years or whatever, Maiden have moved along so fast and grown massively so fast. And I think what happens really is that they generate a new fan base every day. There'll be people coming younger, babies, kids at school. They won't even know anything about the first 2 albums. So I think by the time, you know, we've tried in I remember going to Los Angeles in '84, and there were people I spoke to in Los Angeles that had never even heard of Iron Maiden. So they were still trying to create this, you know, this empire, which they have. Mm-hmm. But for me personally, I think it moved in such a fast pace that people get left behind. So, well, whatever Paul, in a way, Paul Di'Anno, he seems to mess things up himself a lot. I think that's not down to the fans. I think it's just down to the person who doesn't manage himself properly. I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, we took a change of direction in the music, so I can quite understand Iron Maiden fans not loving Lionheart because it's not their kind of music. But I think because of the sheer pace that Iron Maiden grew throughout the world, suddenly the first few albums get lost. And the funny thing is, it's only been the last 10 years or so, when it came to 30-year anniversary of the first album, or 20 years, you start getting recognition of it. You start getting recognition from fans. And as I say, because I think they moved at such a sheer speed, people get left behind, the original lineup get left behind. I think my only saving grace is why people remember me and Di'Anno and Clive is the fact that we were the original lineup. We were on the first album, and that first album stood its test of time. So I think that people will always remember that first album. And a lot of the times, a lot of people have said to me they prefer the early stuff than they do the later stuff. But that's down to personal opinion. Sure. But as I say, I think it was just a case of being left behind. And if people don't want to, they see Lionheart, they're not interested because they know it's not Iron Maiden. So I don't know. It's like praying Mantis. 15 years of praying Mantis, we did some great albums, but we never actually got any further up that ladder to make it into the next level.
Right. No, definitely. Well, I'll tell you what, Dennis, people, if they're going to leave behind the old Iron Maiden stuff, they better look forward to this brand new release, The Reality of Miracles. It is Lionheart. It's a fantastic release for anybody that likes album-oriented rock or melodic rock or just straight up rock and roll. I'll tell you what, Dennis, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a track for us to feed the people a little taste of, maybe tell us a quick story about it. So what would you like us to share with our fans?
Oh, Jesus. Okay, I'm going to pick one of my own songs. I can't tell you the story of other songs because you'd have to ask Steve or Lee or whatever. I'm going to pick Kingdom of the East because when we came back from touring over in Japan with Praying Mantis, my old band, funny enough, that was a fantastic tour because I got to play with them again on stage in Tokyo. We did a couple of numbers from the old albums, but I wrote this song when we come back from Japan, and it was one of the first ones we actually started demoing for the new album, Kingdom of the East, because it was just a tribute to all the fans in Japan that have supported Lionheart and Praying Mantis over the last 30 years. So there was one of those things where I wanted to dedicate a song to them. So it's just a shame that it took 2 years to get onto the album.
No doubt. Well, let's check it out right now. It's Kingdom of the East, and this is Aftershocks.
Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.